Thank you for listening to our PAC Politics podcast. Our podcast is brought to you by our organization, our United Resource PAC. If you don't know, we are a tax-exempt political organization. I'm your host, Brittany McDowell, and again, thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode. Guys, I know today you probably are expecting me to talk about how we are still not anywhere near a stimulus package. But that's actually not what I'm going to cover. I know that the focus of our organization is COVID-19, economic stimulus and relief, but quite frankly, I've mentioned multiple times the fact that we are more likely than not going to see a stimulus bill passed before the election. And considering that I've said that so many times, quite frankly, I don't want to say yet again, we still don't have anything. So that said, today I briefly want to explore, and I mean very, very briefly, I want to explore how COVID-19 is impacting politics. I think in the course of things, in the course of everything that is going on, there is something that not a lot of people are paying attention to, something that a lot of people are willing to overlook given what we are going through. So we're going to talk about that. Again, this is not going to be a long episode. I think I can get it done in one segment. So that said, stay tuned, sit back, and let's get this episode started. All right, so pretty much the context of all of the conversations that I have about COVID-19 are around our need, our current need, matter of fact, for economic stimulus. And we still do have that need, especially since we do not yet have the passage of a stimulus package. But something that a lot of people, myself included, are guilty of not really talking about is the very frank level of power that governments, not just our own government here in the United States, but governments across the globe are gaining immense power. And we're talking power that either they didn't have before, or if they would have even tried to acquire that type of power or that level of power in the past, their citizenry would have very sharply, very quickly fought back and fought against the acquisition of said power. So I find it interesting, again, and I'm examining myself as well, that even amidst these conversations around economic stimulus, something that we do not talk about, that we have not talked about, is the fact that governments are gaining more power. Now, I'd be remiss for not acknowledging the fact that some people by nature, through, either their own personal experience or in relation to their political allegiance or alliance, they, for whatever reason, just don't even like government. They don't. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, when I talk about the gaining of power, I'm talking about governments gaining power that even people who were, for the most part, okay giving government some form of power, a level of power that even those people would more likely than not have an issue with. But in this moment, with what we're going through in dealing with COVID-19, specifically those people who would otherwise be okay with handing over some government power in exchange for some type of benefit that they would get in return, even they probably in normal times would have a problem with the level of power that governments are starting to assume. And obviously the people on the other side, the people who are, absolutely no government power over my dead body, those people most certainly, would in normal times fight against the acquisition of the type of power that governments are now assuming. But again, a lot of people, they're just trying to live, and in trying to live, they're not paying attention to, or they are willing to overlook the fact that governments are really going for the power grab. When we consider the unprecedented expansion of power that governments are getting and going for, it's not just happening here in the United States. It's happening in many, 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 many countries. I referenced before the people who are advocates of small government and advocates of no government in some respects. I think they have a legitimate concern when they bring up this very thing. And let me tell you what that thing is. A lot of people question when we are going to go back to, I'm using air quotes here that you can't see, normal. Well, advocates of small government, those who are kind of paying attention to the power grab, are bringing up the question of, are states, and I don't mean like, Utah, Nevada, I like governmental states, are these states going to be willing or reluctant to give up the power that they've acquired these last few months? Especially when you consider that historically, when a state is able to grab a certain level of power, they don't give it back. I'm not saying that hasn't always been the case, but for the most part, I mean, you can kind of see the same things with the citizens as well. For instance, when you give citizens benefits such as, let's just say like Medicare, it's very hard to give that type of social benefit and then take it away because people have benefited from it. And the reverse is said for the states. When we give them a certain level of power, when the time passes where that power is no longer warranted, um, historically, they are not willing to concede the power that they've attained. And I will say that I am not necessarily personally one of those small government advocates, but there is some legitimacy, especially when you look at the historical aspect of this argument and what has happened throughout history. There is legitimacy to the argument of questioning if the states are not just willing, but even able to give that power away. Consider this. For instance, okay, we've had like 80 some odd countries, they've declared a state of emergency in response to the pandemic. But of those 84, 85, something like that, there is an organization called Reporters Without Borders, and they have claimed that almost half of those countries have restricted freedom of the press. And that might seem kind of unrelated. But freedom of the press compared to the pandemic, again, you may not be able to make the connection, because quite frankly, it doesn't really seem like there's a connection. But that is just one demonstration of ways in which states are limiting the powers of the people, and in a way seeking to amass their own power, again, by going so far as to limit the press. 1 second here. Okay, sorry about that. I have got to find a way to not really have interruptions while I'm recording. Anywho, so I'm not going to make this long. So that's kind of one way that we've seen governments have more power. And again, we're talking about nearly half of the governments that have declared states of emergency due to the pandemic. The main thing that I think is a clear connection for most people in how governments are acquiring more power through the pandemic is the unveiling of large-scale surveillance programs that they are doing in the name of contact tracing. Now, hear me out. As an organization, again, we are absolutely fighting for COVID-19 economic stimulus and relief. And as part of that, we are also looking to, and we acknowledge the fact that you can't really have economic relief if you don't have the relief that is directly speaking to the pandemic itself, the addressing of COVID-19. And so that considered, do I think that that contact tracing is necessary? Absolutely. But again, it's kind of one of those things where you're giving up a lot of privacy to the state in order for them to make sure that members of society are safe. Does that need to be done? Yes. I'd be insane to say that we shouldn't contact trace. But again, this is an example of us kind of trading our privacy, giving up something to the state in exchange for a perceived benefit. And I think that contact tracing is more than a perceived benefit. I think that we have found that it is highly effective. So I would never even attempt to make the argument against it. But again, even that considered, that still is a prime example of how states have amassed power that before citizens of said states would, for the most part, not been willing to give. They wouldn't have been willing to give that level of power to states. And so, yeah, there is an impact on privacy that again, advocates of small government, if they make the argument against contact tracing, you can see how they might make that argument. But as a society, we have to find a way to recognize the arguments, recognize the validity of the arguments, and address those arguments while at the same time not putting ourselves at more risk than is necessary. Again, I'm not saying this because I'm saying, oh, we don't need to contact trace. We absolutely do. But I don't want people under the illusion that you were not giving up anything. You were giving up your right to privacy. And I want you to consider history and consider that when states do acquire mass amounts of power, historically, they do not concede that power. So as you consider what our new normal is going to be like, just how I have said before in relation to the likelihood of getting economic stimulus before the election. And, I'm like not a prophet, nothing like that. But I think the signs were there. I think the signs are also here, not just in this present moment, but historically. The signs are here to say that our new normal will include all of us giving up some of our privacy. And I think we have to prepare for that. I think that individuals and organizations that have concern about privacy, you need to kind of start thinking about that now, because we are not going back to the normal that we had before. You were kidding yourself even after a vaccine, even after the numbers go down. The normal we had before is gone. It's something that a lot of people don't want to contend with, especially because we don't know what it will look like. We are creatures of habit. We don't like change, but change is not only coming, change is here. Change is absolutely here. And so think about that, because governments have gained more power. And again, I know that we are an organization that focuses on economic stimulus, but this is kind of part of the equation that I want you to think about, because this matters. This absolutely matters. It's fall, and you know what that means, right? You can find us on Facebook. No, I know that fall and Facebook have nothing to do with each other, but they both start with the letter F. So, according to my logic, perfect time to tell you about finding us on Facebook since it is fall. Isn't that exceptional logic? By my point of view, it is. Anywho, in the description box below, you'll find a link to our Facebook page. Check us out. If you like us, like our page, we'll be more than glad to have you. Again, find us on Facebook. Look in the description box below for the link. Hey, this is Brittany. Just wanted to shoot you a quick reminder. Look in the description box of this episode and you can find a link to our website. On our website, you can find our latest blog posts. You can find our contact information. You even want to make a contribution, you can go over there and do that as well. You can find out the policies we are looking at and targeting as an organization. You know, I say all the time that we are a tax-exempt political organization. If you want to know more about that, again, go on over to our website, our-pac.com, where you can find out everything you want to know. You can do everything you want to do. We will gladly welcome you on our website with open arms. Again, check out our website in the description box below. All right, so that's our show for this Wednesday, October 21st. I thank you for tuning in. And again, I know that as an organization, we focus on COVID-19, economic stimulus and relief. And we didn't exactly talk about stimulus because, quite frankly, there isn't a lot going on right now. There is the illusion of a lot. You know, they say perception is reality. And in this case, perception... I mean, it could be reality, but it just depends on what your perception is. But anywho, nothing is really going on with the stimulus talks at this point. And so due to that, I wanted to take this opportunity today to talk about how not just our government, but governments across the world are amassing powers which in normal circumstances they would have a difficult time attaining, and powers that citizens most often would not give up. So think about this. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe. Get your hazmat suit, all that good stuff. And I will see you Friday. And thank you for listening to our PAC Politics podcast. Goodbye.